Orhan and Sedat had been inseparable friends since childhood. They grew up in the same neighborhood, went to the same school, and supported each other in every moment of their lives. From the days they ran through the narrow streets of their neighborhood to the nights they whispered secrets to each other, everything had made them like brothers. However, fate would turn them into enemies and drag them into a nightmare they never imagined. As the years passed, life took different directions. Orhan fell in love with Sedat's younger sister, Kader. At first, he hid his feelings, but his love was not unrequited. Kader reciprocated his feelings, and over time, their love turned into a passionate relationship. The families were supportive of this relationship, and they married soon after. Their happiness was dazzling. But this happiness would not last forever. One night, Sedat had a terrible car accident. He lost control of the steering wheel, and the vehicle went out of control. The impact of the crash was devastating. His young son Mehmet was paralyzed, and Kader suffered severe trauma, losing her memory entirely. When she woke up, she couldn't recognize Orhan or her own family. Her entire life had vanished behind a veil of mist. Orhan, filled with an overwhelming rage as he watched the love of his life slip away, blamed Sedat for what happened to Kader. The man he considered his own blood had suddenly turned into his greatest enemy. Orhan cut all ties with Sedat, not even wanting to look at him. But this was only the beginning. As the months passed after the accident, strange events started happening in Sedat's life. At first, they were just small things like curtains moving with the wind or strange noises heard at night. But over time, these occurrences took a terrifying turn. Mehmet claimed that someone was in his room at night. The young boy began whispering in an incomprehensible language. He drew strange symbols on the walls at night and told stories no one knew. Shadows moved within the house. Unknown entities appeared in mirrors, and Kader withered away more each passing day. Her face sank, and her body wasted away as if something was eating her from the inside. Orhan embarked on a frantic search to restore Kader's memory. Initially, he tried every modern medical approach: doctors, psychologists, hypnotherapists. But none of them worked. Kader's mind was like a maze shrouded in mist. She didn't remember even the smallest fragment of her past. Orhan grew more hopeless with each passing day. Then, accepting the inadequacy of modern science, he began to seek other solutions. He first visited people known for their supernatural powers in the local community. Sorcerers, fortune tellers, healers. Each one offered him different solutions, but none worked. His hopelessness turned into an obsession. Kader was not just a wife, but his life source. If he lost her, he would lose himself. His search led him down a darker path. He met people who spoke of ancient books, forgotten texts, and forbidden knowledge whispered about in the dark of the night. He browsed secret forums on the internet and listened to stories whispered in the dead of night. Finally, he found someone who could truly help him, an ancient sage whose name no one dared to utter. When he found the man, he knocked on the door of an elderly man living in an isolated village far from the city. The man scrutinized Orhan for a long time. When he saw the tired, exhausted but determined look in Orhan's eyes, he sighed deeply. "Some memories must be forgotten," he said. "Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again." But Orhan insisted. Eventually, the man pulled out an old, worn book in deep silence. The pages were yellowed and the corners seemed burned. The writings were in an ancient, unknown language. As Orhan carefully examined each page, his skin crawled. The rituals described inside, the summoned entities. He could feel that none of them belonged to this world. But he didn't care. He would do anything to bring Kader back. That night, in a moment when even the wind hesitated to move, Orhan performed the ritual. He lit the candles and drew the symbols described in the book on the floor. Sacrificing his own blood, he whispered the forbidden words. At that moment, the air inside the house changed. The flickering flames of the candles began to form strange shapes. The shadows moved and the cracks on the walls grew. Then a whisper was heard. At first, he thought it was the wind, but then he realized it was Kader's voice. But it was strange. The voice belonged to Kader, but the words did not. "Congratulations, Orhan." The sound made his hair stand on end. Then the doors slammed shut by themselves and the room's temperature dropped suddenly. The candles went out. Orhan's breath hung in the air as steam. The shadows began to merge in the middle of the room. The darkness gathered like a solid mass, stretching and stretching. And finally, a humanoid but completely wrong entity appeared. Orhan didn't know what he had awakened, but it was too late. From that moment on, nothing was the same. Kader's memory did not return, but her eyes filled with darkness. She stayed awake at night, talking to shadows. Mehmet became even more withdrawn. Sedat began having terrifying dreams. He felt a presence dragging him from his bed at night. Twisted figures appeared in the corners of his room, watching him. Footsteps echoed throughout the house. And the worst part was, he was no longer sure if Kader was still the same woman. One night, Sedat woke up to a sudden sound. He heard whispers from behind the door. Listening carefully, what he heard made his hair stand on end. The whispers sounded like Kader's voice, but the language she was speaking was not human. When Sedat opened the door slightly, the entity that emerged from the darkness turned towards him. It had Kader's face, but its eyes were large, black voids. It smiled and whispered, "Sedat, do you remember me?" At that moment, a scream echoed through the house. Mehmet was crying in his room, flailing. Above the child's bed on the ceiling, a figure stood. Its skeletal long fingers reached towards Mehmet's face. When Orhan saw this moment, he realized his mistake, but it was too late to turn back. The spirit was unleashed and no one could stop it. That night was the pinnacle of fear. Sedat was struggling with the echoes resounding throughout the house. Doors slammed shut by themselves, reflections in the mirrors changed shape like windows opening to other worlds. Orhan was trying to reverse the ritual, but he didn't know the sacrifice he needed to make. And at that moment, the shadows merged. An entity appeared. It was human-like but entirely wrong. It had no eyes and its face looked burned. It bent down and whispered in Sedat's ear, "You called us, and now you are with us." That night, Sedat was pulled into the darkness. He screamed and then there was silence. As Orhan watched the consequences of everything he had done, he fell to his knees. Sedat was gone. Kader's body had become a shell. Mehmet was trembling on the brink of madness, and the darkness waited in the corner of the room. Sometimes the dead should remain buried, because once some doors are opened, they can never be closed again. And this nightmare was just beginning.